social networks we all know and love-hate relationships, whatever we have with them. But it is possible. Just a quick notion of everything else you might want to see. Ad hoc routing protocols. Your nodes are not necessarily being able to talk directly. This is assumption of the internet, and this is false. Like people are behind NAT, or some clients are inside of the browsers where only WebRTC is present. So ad hoc routing is a way you can route effectively. Verify all the functions. So to figure out a function which can be easily checked, but it cannot be predicted, so it takes some delay for nodes to compute it. Distributed secret generation and threshold signatures, really exciting thing. You can generate the secrets among nodes where not a single node knows the secret in the whole, and you can use it in crypto, either to encrypt or decrypt messages. Zero knowledge proofs, variation of the last previous one. You can prove something to the nodes without disclosing the actual thing you're doing. Multi-party cryptographic transactions are the way you just upgrade your symmetric key over time to give additional cryptographic properties to your communication. So basically when your key is leaking, your messages are not leaking, even if some third party knows the keys. And homomorphic encryption is a nice new thing which allows you to transparently operate on the data you don't know about. Basically, it's programs on the encrypted data which need to encrypt it. Yeah, many more. We're reading lots of interesting developments. Thank you.
Mal im Shaming-Discord, nicht im Stäbchen, da sind mehr Leute.
Doch.
Ist gar nicht im Shaming-Discord?
Doch, nee, da haben die mal geschrieben.
Geht?
Ja.
Hi everyone. Thanks for joining us. We are going to be talking about Mike. Yeah, sorry. That's it? It's better? Yeah, sorry about that. Yes, jet lag. Thank you. So we're going to be talking about solving this problem. So this is the problem that makes it impossible for us to connect to external data sources and receive data about important events. So basically, neither Polkadot, Ethereum, Bitcoin, whatever other network, they cannot on their own speak to data sources due to the nature of decentralized consensus. There's nobody that's designated as the source of external information in the way that blocks are generated. And even if you were to designate somebody, you'd have a ton of trust issues. So basically this puts us in a situation where we can't get market data, contractual events data of various kind, like IoT for insurance or whatever other example you'd like, shipping data for shipping related things. You know, any contract that you can think of that would want to know something about the external world outside of the chain, or would want to make a payment or touch a system outside of the chain to do something meaningful, it can't do that right now. Right? So that's why a lot of the very cool use cases we're all excited about, and in our opinion, that's why a lot of them aren't on production, and that's why they aren't getting adopted, and that's why we all keep giving each other tokens all day long. Tokens are fantastic. Great. I like tokens. Very useful. Absolutely. But if smart contracts are going to become the technology that becomes a standard for how agreements are done, then they need to know what's going on. If they don't know what's going on, they can't resolve in a meaningful way against the real world, right? So this is a problem that people that are closer to production run into, but everybody that's building towards actually getting to production or anywhere in the process of getting close to thinking about how is this going to work on production, I promise you they're going to hit this problem, right? So if we can solve this problem, then we can have all kinds of insurance contracts, interesting contracts related to, whatever you can think of about an external event, shipping, weather, whatever category of contracts you're interested in, right? Now, the solution for this initially seems relatively simple. You basically designate a trusted third party. The trusted third party is called an oracle. The trusted third party is responsible for delivering the data to a specific contract, in a specific format, on a specific schedule, right? So that's just the idea of middleware. So it's basically, since blockchain networks cannot get data on their own, since they cannot reach out and talk to any API whatsoever, they need a trusted third party to do it on their behalf. They basically need an off-chain agent. This off-chain agent is blockchain middleware, and that off-chain agent can basically, ingest data, process it, and give it to contracts on whatever chain. And they can also, wrong way. And they can also take commands from the contracts and, as an off-chain agent, execute meaningful off-chain events, such as traditional payments. So if you were making some kind of application that needed some data for it to know what's going on in the real world, and then you wanted it to pay people in their bank account or in PayPal or wherever you wanted, in both of those, from both the input and the output side, you need an off-chain agent, basically. But in order for the thing to actually be useful, it needs to be secure end-to-end, right? If the thing in the middle is secure, and then all the systems, like the system triggering it, can just fall down very easily, then the end-to-end reliability is low. If then the end-to-end reliability is low, it's not going to get used. Because people don't care about the successful security characteristics of this piece or that piece or that piece. They care about the end-to-end reliability, right? So the project we're engaged in is basically getting us to a point where we're assuming that really smart people are going to solve that middle piece, right? Ethereum, Bitcoin, Polkadot, a bunch of really, really smart people. And then we're focused on making sure that the end-to-end relationship that the contract in the middle has to all its inputs and outputs are secure enough that people still consider it to be a more reliable, a better way to do digital agreement, right? So there's basically two pieces to our approach. Actually, before we jump into our approach, you might need to look at what you probably don't want to do is you don't want a data source and a decentralized computation system, and then there's one node triggering thousands of nodes, right? This is the scenario you want to avoid, because in this scenario, we're basically saying we have this super reliable piece of contractual state running and changing here, but then it's triggered by a highly unreliable system that you can take down with relatively minimal effort using a ton of approaches we don't have time to go into. But yeah, that's not good. That's not gonna. So just to reiterate, that's the way probably not to do it. If we think about the ways to do it, there's two fundamental approaches. One approach is basically decentralization, right? Why do we feel smart contracts are reliable? Because there's many independent node operators confirming that something is happening about the contract, basically. That there's a state change according to some certain set of rules, so on and so on, right? So if we just follow this logic and we extend it out to our ability to guarantee the reliability and quality of inputs, the approach we would take, logically speaking, would be let's decentralize, let's have multiple people verify inputs, let's have them come to consensus off-chain, let's have whatever method of consensus between multiple independent node operators to make sure that an input is reliable. And once you decentralize the middleware layer, you can basically move on to decentralizing the data sources to triggering one data source, multiple data sources, whatever collection you want. But the first step is getting to a layer in between the highly decentralized contract state and the more centralized data sources, but a layer that can basically provide you reliable this capability basically into the Polkadot network. And what that means is that we'll be, and this is just an example of how this can enable contracts on other chains to function well, but basically we're working together to make sure that all the contracts running in the Polkadot network whatever parachain they're running or whatever place they're running in that network, have access to a multitude of inputs and outputs so they can do meaningful off-chain actions. So the first way we're looking at doing that is we're basically taking those hundreds